Now, let me pose a question. Is there a solution for media and entertainment customers to seamlessly enrich their catalogs by licensing robust entertainment data sets? Who knows? In our next session, we will dive deep on how Fabric, IMDb are making it seamless and frictionless for customers to manage their metadata. Please welcome Natasha from IMDb, Rob from Fabric, and Ben from Sinclair Broadcast Group. Team.
Hi, I'm Natasha Bishop. I'm the head of business development at IMDb. And I am going to kick us off with Rob Delf from Fabric, Ben Lister from Sinclair Broadcast Group. We're going to walk through the IMDb data set. We're going to then kick it over to Rob to walk through the solution that we've come up with to seamlessly enrich catalogs, and then over to Ben to talk through how he's used this solution. So to get started, IMDb, we've been around for about 30 years now, and today we are the world's most popular and authoritative source for entertainment data. So that includes information on movies, TV series, streaming solution, cast and crew, and entertainment professionals. So a lot of information. So what we've done with that 30 years of data is, as you can imagine, we have hundreds of millions of searchable data items. So we've packaged those data items into licensable packages that we can provide to our customers. So some highlights, we include over 10 million titles, so movies, TV shows, video games. We have over 14 million cast and crew and entertainment professionals. We also offer box office data globally from over 60 countries, and we have over 1.5 billion ratings from fans across the globe. So it's a super powerful data set that we can put in the hands of customers to power their entertainment experiences. So how do we do that? So IMDb data is available on the AWS Marketplace, and it's delivered through AWS Data Exchange. We provide 3 primary packages. One is a ratings package. One is essential metadata, so that's going to have all the information that you need to power your entertainment experiences. And then also, as I mentioned, box office data. So we provide a couple of different delivery mechanisms. One is a bulk JSON file, which is uploaded daily to the cloud. And then another is a GraphQL, which is updated in real time. So some of the cool things about why we work through AWS Data Exchange. So our customers are really able to benefit by, when you are working with IMDb data, you can seamlessly integrate into all of the AWS tools, solutions, and products, which has made it really easy to work with Fabric. They are also on AWS, so it's been easy for them to work with our data and provide this experience that we're going to talk to today. So who licenses it? So IMDb, we were one of Amazon's first acquisitions back in 1997. And since then, our data has been deeply integrated across all of those experiences. So I'm pretty sure the first group to integrate IMDb data was Amazon Retail. And since then, a lot of different teams have used it. So Amazon Studios, Prime, Fire TV, all of our device organizations, advertising. If you have an Alexa device, if you ask it an entertainment question, chances are IMDb is behind providing you your answers. So a lot of different teams use our data. But beyond Amazon, we also work with companies around the world to license our data sets. And I think one of the really cool things that I've started to learn over the last few years is just how diverse of a customer set that we really have. So we work with most of the major studios, streaming services, but we also work with social media companies. We work with consumer electronics, marketing companies, financial institutes, nonprofits, And also hospitality. So when you hop on your plane going home and you're looking for the movie that you want to watch, a lot of times IMDb is powering that in-flight experience. So it's been pretty cool to see the type of value that a bunch of different companies have found in our data sets. As diverse as a customer group that we work with is what they're powering the data to do. So a couple of examples here, data science and analytics. People are using our data to help their customers figure out what to watch. They're also using it to power recommendations, personalizations. And in fact, if you walk right on over to the AWS booth, you can see a really cool demo, generative AI for movie recommendations. So I encourage you all to go over there and check out a real life example. And then we also have customers using our data for internal analytics and also sentiment analysis. So figuring out, what do I want to acquire? How do I want to spend my marketing budget? What am I going to invest in? And also producing different types of insights to, really help inform better business decisions. So there's a lot of internal use cases that everybody's using our data for. Media supply chain, which we're going to dive into deeper in just a little bit. But customers are really looking for an authoritative source of data to go in and enrich their catalog. So one of the problems that we're trying to solve for here is we found that people's catalogs are disorganized. There's gaps in there. They want to enrich it further to produce better experiences for their customers. And you can do that with IMDb data. But that's not enough. So that's why we partnered with companies like, with Fabric, to really work with them on what they specialize in, using their software tools and services to make it really easy and seamless for our customers to do that. So we'll dive into that a little bit deeper in a little bit. Couple other use cases before I turn it over is end-to-end solutions. So customers are using our data to enrich their customer-facing title pages and their EPGs. So we offer plots, those ratings, posters to really make sure that their experiences are engaging and that they're retaining customers and they're growing their customers. So it's not just behind the screen, but we also are powering a lot of entertainment experiences for customers to actually see. So that's an overview of quick overview of our IMDb data set, and I want to turn it over to Rob to walk through Fabric.
All right, great. Well, thanks, Natasha. I think that where we play, and just to kind of set up the landscape, and I'll take the clicker, to set up the landscape is you have amazing data sources like IMDb, and how do you get them into your supply chain? So if that whole data set is delivered to you as an API feed or a JSON package or an S3 backup, how do you then use that against your own catalog? So Fabric is a title master solution for entertainment creators as well as distributors. And the way it fits into the supply chain, if we take a look at sort of my generic, this is the supply chain as it exists today. Across all of our customers, we have these 7 buckets, right? Typically, you have your rights management system. You end up with a title management system, which is where, Fabric plays. You go into asset management, image management, content scheduling, all the way through to the end, which is, preparation, packaging, and then content delivery. But what are the things that interact with this? And this is where it starts to get interesting and complicated. So because you have these individual 7 silos, you've got different licensors and distributors that interact with different pieces of it. So you do a rights deal, but they also send you title information. And they also send you asset information and images, right? And so you sort of are touching all of these different points, different ratings bodies, localization studios, public domain sources. More and more, we're seeing a lot of AI services that are coming in. So where do you put all this stuff? And how do you orchestrate it in the right way? You also have the set of data sources that come in. Now, IMDb is, our best partner for this. Super rich data set, as Natasha talked about. But we've also got things like IDER, right? And you've got specialized data sets. So like let's say I'm running a consumer app and I want IMDb and I want the star rankings, but I also want the common sense media information that is coming in from, for children's content. And I also want, a tomato meter, and I want this kind of stuff. So you have a variety of data sources. And then you've also got the, kind of going through the supply chain as well. You've got the playout system, so linear channels, video on demand, direct to consumers, partners, and affiliates. And then to close the loop, you've got all the delivery compliance and the ratings. And so you put this thing together, and this is your complicated supply chain. You get a lot of consequence or real challenges within here. A ton of point-to-point integrations, right? Custom-built applications. There's not a lot of we're evolving. I feel like the industry's getting better, but there's just not a lot of great APIs. The team at Flamenco can attest to that. A lot of old applications, mixed integration technologies, and so on. That actually leads us to a lot of title and metadata challenges. So what Natasha was talking about is so why you'd think that, studios, distributors would just have this perfectly in order around what they were putting on, on air. But the reality is a little more complex than that, where it's you get in all of that stuff because of that supply chain with all the arrows and all the things coming in. It actually ends up in this place where you've got, a lack of governance around what a title really is, multiple data sources. You've got low quality metadata coming in from really everywhere, spreadsheets, different sources. If it's like any of the studios we work with, it's a decentralized process from a management perspective. There's very few that we have where it's there's one team that's in charge of title governance. We have a couple of those, but more often than not, it's third-party producers sending you stuff and different pieces of information coming in at all times. That basically leads to these things that are, terribly manual processes and no source of truth. So from there, the real-life outcomes are really inefficiencies in the supply chain. It's garbage in, garbage out through the process. You end up with a increased risk around what's being, put out there, duplication of tasks, and really uninformed decisions. So enter Fabric Studio, and what we do is we make sense of that mess, and we do so by, it's not just a smoke show. It's not smoke and mirrors. I should put some mirrors up here too. So we actually come in our software application. It's all hosted in AWS. You can buy it through Marketplace. It's a web application that becomes a source of truth and integrates with those different components. So that source of truth, and this is what we're going to talk about with Ben, is around okay, we have a source of truth for title records, but then what do we do around advanced enrichment? So this is where we pull in all of the IMDb information and create a nice, perfect record that then can continue along in the supply chain. And then from there, we make that entirely accessible through APIs, system-to-system processes, and enable that to be used repeatedly in the organization. And the way that this is typically set up, if you look at Fabric Studio, which is our web-based product, becomes your title master. That then connects out to IMDb and other data sources. Then we connect via API into those 7 systems that I talked about initially. So your rights management system, your asset management systems, we pull data in there. And a lot of this is about federation of IDs. So one title in a complex supply chain might have 20 different IDs that all mean the same thing. It's Top Gun is this number and this number and this number and this number and on and on and on. Is pulling all that stuff together so I can see across the supply chain everything about my title from that ID federation perspective. And then users can come into Fabric, they can see that. We can do reporting off one side and all the APIs off the other. So pretty clean, consistent architecture. So with that, that's a setup of the IMDb data source, and it's also, an indication of, what Fabric does in the supply chain. And I'm going to turn it over to Ben, because a lot of these things, especially at trade shows, you hear about all the pieces and you're okay, well, how does that work and how does that relate to my world and what I'm doing? So with that.
You just want to hear about all my problems, don't you, Rob?
No, I want to hear about the way we solve them.
Well, the first slide talks a lot more clearly about my problems and challenges. So just bear with me here. This will be a bit of group therapy for all of us. I started at Sinclair about 6 years ago in a content acquisition capacity. And we have a saying at Sinclair, every time you go to the headquarters in Baltimore, you come back with another job. You do have to keep the last one you had as well. So on several of those trips, rights management and enriching metadata became part of my responsibilities, as well as content acquisition and scheduling and some of the operational stuff too. So we'll talk about the workflow in a bit, but the first thing I noticed when we started caring about IDs and metadata was asking different business units, and Sinclair is a big organization and, 10,000 employees. There's the tennis channel, 180 plus local stations. We have 5 national networks. Currently still 22 regional sports networks, but we won't talk about that too much. And every single one of these business units is doing a version of scraping this metadata themselves. When we arrived and started looking at this about 3 years ago. And there are finance people scraping IMDb on the website. There are programmers logged into different websites, to try and use ID numbers and match those to media ID numbers that are in-house. And there are 3 versions of that, depending on which department you talk to. And it's a complete chaotic situation. And so how can you drive any efficiency, any kind of clear decision making about what we should be programming, start even thinking about, taking that time away from the people who've got another job to do and actually give them the time back to make better decisions. And this is literally end to end. You can talk about any department, right? You could talk about marketing and tags and SEO. You could talk about finance and reporting. All the critical business decisions come from a very clear set of data and and trying to understand that and read it better. So those were our problems, and this is basically a kind of visual of the solution that we put in place, working with both IMDb and Fabric. So multiple data sources always help, because then you've got further validation of what you're actually talking about. I always like to talk about Die Hard with Bruce Willis. It's depending on which database you're logged into, it might have 13 IDs associated with it. One for the Japanese Blu-ray version, one for the US domestic TV version, another one that someone just made up last week that's added to the database. So multiple data sources always help when you're trying to clean that and get a good view of it for yourself. IMDb is definitely one of the best data sources, I will say. It's far more fields, far more relevant fields, a lot of great user ratings, and recently everyone talks about AI. The tags in IMDb have got considerably better in the last year. It used to be that you had 10 keywords associated with a movie, and they were things like there's a red car or a tree, or something, and it was just not useful. How can you make any programming decisions based on that? But now, if you look at the keywords from IMDb for a film like Terminator, you will see cyborg and, artificial intelligence and, disaster and all this kind of stuff. And those are the kind of things that you want to be able to pull out of your own database and your own programming insights in order to work out what to program and what to purchase, what to air, and, start looking at how you run marathons and stunts and all the rest of it. So with Fabric, we had a really good experience over a period of about 6 or 7 months. And it was a very, very good project team based in a combination of the US and the UK. And they helped us basically work in a very bespoke way to our own needs. And we're talking about movies, we're talking about series, we're talking about cracking problems like, the show hierarchy of the show, season, episode. And you want to remove as many of those manual steps as possible. And so with Fabric, they created an environment for us to go in, actually search for a movie like Die Hard, and then start looking up with the different data sources to actually enrich. And I think we have something like 47 fields of metadata for each one of these titles. And then that comes seamlessly across into our rights management database. So all of our deals, it's one of those things you have to do as a programmer. You have to think about, what did I buy last year? How often have I bought this show? You map it obviously to usage and ratings and impressions and all that kind of stuff. And there are so many things you could add to this workflow that aren't on this slide, like finance and reporting and usage and all that other stuff. But RightsLine is a tool for us that we use across the business for every one of those business units I mentioned earlier. And, adding a deal into RightsLine takes 5 minutes. Adding all the programming associated with that deal, if you're doing it the old way, can take hours and hours and hours. And if you're doing it the old way, you're probably making mistakes. They're probably missing something out. With Fabric, this was a way of automatically enriching using all these data sources and preparing our rights system in order to receive all that information. So we had a really, really deep understanding of what we have. And the final step in the workflow is actually scheduling. So we did an integration between RightsLine and MediaGenix, which is our scheduling tool. And that was very useful because that means all the people that would have just logged into a scheduling tool and added all this information again, which you never know if they're going to do it correctly or not, they actually can use the rights information that's being fed directly from that source of truth, along with all the programming information and the IDs that they would need in order to build that schedule, send it out, and everything else. So we're actually now looking at expanding on this kind of workflow into other parts of the business, whether it's marketing, whether it's finance and accounting, and using everything that we're doing from the enrichment point and the RightsLine point as the source of truth for a lot of the business operations. So what did we get from this? Well, you do make a small investment to get into this kind of streamlined world, but ultimately you're saving a lot of time and money. In our case, a lot of people get their time back to focus on their core job. That is a critical component to this because, people who do have to handle this metadata will tell you it's a hazard of the job. And, again, even if they're going to scrape it from different websites, the websites themselves don't necessarily have it all in order. IMDb does, which is why people use it a lot of the time, especially at the front end. But if you're using other sources of data, you can often find mistakes in that information. So pulling multiple sources in really helps you clean that up, and then you can lean on the most high quality sources of data in order to make the better business decisions. So one of those would be, which programs should we buy? And so, I have a network that we run sci-fi on, and if I want to, create a stunt for some sci-fi movies, I might want to pick a theme. Actually, we did pick a theme of artificial intelligence for our Comet Fest this year, which is in August. And the first thing we did, we obviously had a brainstorm, and we had our programmers sit in a room thinking about cyborgs and Terminator and Westworld and all that kind of stuff. But the next thing we did was just pull a whole bunch of metadata and have the data start talking to us. And it really helped us with the avails analysis that we were doing. I don't know if you guys, buy programming from studios, but they'll often send you very, very simple spreadsheet, which probably just has a title, maybe a year, and if you're lucky, a price. So this is a part of that process now for us. And, I'm pleased to say with people like MGM, you get a very full suite of IMDb metadata, but you don't get that from everyone. So you have to have this in place to try and make really good decisions on the fly, so that you can maximize your ratings and your revenues. So, yeah, I think that's where we're at. We've got a lot of plans for how we are going to expand on this, and marketing and talking to audiences, and the department I'm in is focused on fast channels as well. So there are some really clever things you can do with the IDs themselves in order to maximize search and discovery on platforms like Roku and Samsung and others. But we'll save that for another day.
Great. I think that sort of wraps up the full, kind of flow through this. Do we have time for questions? Or
we've got time for maybe one question, if anyone. And we're going to be brave enough. Here we go. Well done.
There we go.
You mentioned Flamenco. Is that your preferred integrator as far as Fabric goes?
They have some pre-built adapters. We can use Flamenco. We can use Quest's tool. We also have worked with the ESBs that every studio seems to have. So the Workatos and the MuleSofts and all of those. I think we're we're agnostic from an API standpoint. I think that we prefer to have generic adapters that can move data around fast.
Thank you.
Okay. Natasha, Rob, Ben, excellent session. Thank you very much. Should we give them a round of applause?